What is going on? Welcome back to the YouTube channel. So in today's video, I'm going to run you through a bit of a mic'd up push session. So I'm currently just sitting outside the gym, about to head on in. I'll look to try and give you a bit of value, a bit of tips and tricks on how I go about trying to grow my chest, shoulders, arms, triceps for that matter. In the off season, try and put on as much muscle as possible as a pro natural bodybuilder. So of course, we're nailing our pre-workout. I've got it in a bit of a little slushy format, as you can probably hear. Absolutely delicious. Key supplements. Been running this pre for the last month, 2 months since I got it. Anyway, I've obviously just nailed that. So let's get that into the system, get the juices flowing. With that being said, let's get the nut on. Get the head in the right spot. Let's go crush it. Okie dokie, we are in here for push. We're starting on the machine lateral, the Flex Fitness lateral. A bit of a pro tip here, any type of lateral, obviously like a cuff lateral or a machine lateral, holding something in your hands, super valuable. Sort of replicates and emulates a bit of a dumbbell lateral, gives you that added bit of grip. And the things that I'm also focusing on here is making sure I'm keeping my arms, relatively straight, as opposed to the machine, which, forces you to, if you were, let's say, to hold on to the handles of the machine, it'll force you to have your elbows at 90 degrees, but not wanting to have them, literally locked out, but, relatively straight. So top set here, we've got stack plus 20.
Yeah, all good.
It's something on a lateral raise. I feel like you can kind of, towards the end of the set, use a bit of swing, use a bit of momentum to try and get, the last rep or two up, and then control it down on the eccentric, as opposed to, needing to be, 100% strict the entirety of the rep, or entirety of the set for that matter. Anyway, I'm gonna do a back off with the stack plus 10. You don't need to see that, and I'll catch you for the shoulder press. Tell you what, that lighting is awfully rough. But anyway, we've warmed up, done 1 plate, 2 plate, 3 plate, 4 plate. And again, I want to reiterate the importance on making sure that you get your setup right in terms of the machine, and write it in your logbook in terms of what the machine needs to look like in terms of the arms path, like the back pad, the seat pad, and that kind of thing, particularly on the M-Torture New Tech kits, which have a lot of, changing points or customizability to it. So, people can often, jump into the same machine next week and be at, different arm height, which means that your range might be different. Range might be less, and therefore your progression is not consistent across week on week. So that's where all I can say is make sure your setup is consistent week on week. Right, so the things that I'm thinking about on the shoulder press, and particularly this machine shoulder press, is, firstly, it all starts from the floor. My feet need to be driving into the floor, creates a nice, strong, stable base. I just can't get over the fact that, when some people are often doing a shoulder press, their legs are just flaying around everywhere, feet are constantly moving, and it's like, you need to keep those feet stable and strong, driving into the ground, because again, it all starts from the ground up. And then also through my wrists, want to keep, strong through my wrists, drive up through those, and consciously thinking of that. And also creating a nice arch in my back, create a nice, stable foundation. So with that being said, let's lock in. Oh! 3, 2. Yeah. Sure, that last one might have been a little bit of a grinder. Not too bad. That was 8 reps with 4.5 plates. Sorry, I'm slightly squinting because of the sun. But last rotation, that was 7 reps, and that 7th was a genuine grinder. So that's a rep up. And that last rep felt easier. So that's a big win. I've hopefully got the camera positioned such that the sun isn't ruining this shot. But anyway, here we go for the back off with 4 bickies. That was actually a matched rep set, 4 plates for 10. I think last rotation, the last rep was a bit of a grinder as well. That one was a little bit, probably should have rested a little bit. I'm still catching my breath before that set. Yeah, as I said, probably should have rested a little bit more after the top set into that set. Either way, I'll take the rep added on the top set, but you know, I touched on this, but this was 4 plates for a top set, not a back off set, at the back end of prep, and I even might have slightly gone under 4 plates for a top set, in fact, at the end of the prep, purely given the strong correlation between pressing movements and body weight. So pressing strength and body weight, again, has such a strong correlation. You've got less body weight behind you to press that movement. So relative strength is something that definitely needs to be considered in a contest prep and shouldn't be overlooked, particularly when pressing strength does come down, but you know, you've got to consider relative to your body weight, what does that look like? I have been running the Flex Fitness vertical press, or flat press, whatever you want to call it, for like 6 months since post-prep, and I've obviously progressed it really nicely, but fortunately it's out of order at the minute. I think there's actually the technician fixing it as we speak, but I'm obviously not going to wait for that, so I'm going to revert back to the trusty old faithful that I ran for 2-3 years. Ran through all of the prep. The Nautilus vertical press. Pretty similar movement pattern in terms of flat press, and it presses sort of in an upward trajectory. However, this one is a neutral grip, or a preference to that, to ensure my elbow alignment is where I want, compared to the Flex Fitness press. So it'll be interesting to see what loading I can do here. I'll probably be slightly, I say slightly down, maybe on loading from, you know, peak off season when I was utilising this. But you know, it'd be interesting to see how I am compared to what I was at the back end of prep. Obviously I've gained strength, but not in this specific movement. So, you know, if I was to continue running this, I'd probably need a few rotations to reacclimatise myself to it and get into the zone of the movement pattern. All right, so we're going to give 3 plates a whirl for what I'm thinking is going to be a final warm-up. You know, I look back at my logbook, and you know, I suppose that reiterates the importance of having your logbook, because you know, I can look back and say, what did I do on this loading last time I used it, and equally, what was my body weight at the same time, which was vastly different to what it is right now. So anyway, I think 3.5 plates is probably going to be a solid spot for a top set. So we'll see how 3 plates moves right here. That feels good. Nice little chest contraction. So this and the Flex Fitness chest press, goats in terms of chest recruitment for me personally. Trumps pretty much every other chest machine movement that you could be doing. Ooh, okay. Now, whilst I attempt that 7th rep, it wouldn't have been there without the significant either grind, slip of execution. My butt would have had to go all over the shop. The shoulders probably would have, again, gone all over the shop. The spot would have probably helped, but is what it is. So that was a solid 3.5 to 6, and we'll back off with probably 3 plates, I'd say. Fundamentally, I think one of the reasons why a lot of people have shit chests is because of their setup. Their setup in their pressing movements, and also one of the reasons why I like using machines is because you can kind of control that setup as opposed to, let's say, a barbell or a dumbbell, where there's a bit more room for error in terms of your setup. You've got to kick the dumbbells back, and that sort of throws you out of whack. Likewise, you've got to unrack the load on a bench or incline bench or anything like that, or a Smith machine. Maybe Smith machine's a little bit more fixed because the bar is, as I say, fixed, but machines are a great ability to do that. And as I say, sort of fundamentally what people are doing wrong is it's their shoulder positioning and not being able to retract your scapula, depress your shoulders, and ultimately raise your chest up and effectively take out your shoulders of the movement. So a lot of people end up front delt pressing, and hence why a lot of people have really good delts but not very good chests, when they still might be very strong at pressing, but they're not pressing with their chest. So you see, I'm not actually that strong on pressing movements, but I know and can feel so much in my chest. Oh yes, that was excellent. It would have been so easy for me on that last rep to roll my shoulders forward to press out that last little rep, but I didn't. I kept in control, I kept fixed in my setup and kept tight in my setup. That was a great set. That was 3 plates for 8. So what my chest, such a good stimulation out of that. So we'll transition here to the tricep bias dip. Now the difference between the tricep bias dip and the chest bias dip is all to do with your torso positioning. So if you're bending at the hips and leaning forward with your entire torso, you're predominantly going to get a lot of chest out of it. So you lean forward, you then get a good stretch out of your chest, as opposed to being a bit more upright, which is what I'm aiming to do here, which would be more tricep biased. I rotate between them in my 2 push session rotations. One's a chest bias dip, one is a tricep bias. So the little hack here is the seat belt. Shout out Jim Pin, Nick 10 for discount. Get yourself a seat belt to make sure that you're nice and locked in. Doesn't just apply to a dip, also like a leg extension I use it for, often a seated ham curl as well. Make sure you're nice and locked in to the pad. Okay. A lot of clients actually talk to me about sort of distractions in the gym when they are training, making sure that you, as I say, don't get distracted and get caught up in your rest periods sort of extend out longer than they should, and your session just gets elongated when it shouldn't need to. So one of my pro tips is to your phone is try and have it on do not disturb, turn notifications off. One thing I permanently do, and it's been a game changer for me, is Instagram messages. I don't get notifications. I don't even get the little badge in the icon on the home screen. So unless I go into the app, I don't know if I've got a message. And the reality is, if anything is urgent from someone, they'll text or call me, and obviously I have my messages notifications on, so that's the only, and likewise WhatsApp for any clients as well. So that's where I'll get notifications. But Instagram, I'll check it periodically throughout the day if needed, but you know, the idea is to stay off the socials as much as possible. Okay, onto the cuff lateral. Probably not the most flattering angle given my belly's hanging out. Well, we're sort of transitioning into the back half of the session where we got a few isolations and that kind of thing. Obviously just did the cuff lateral, now into a fly, an overhead tricep extension, tricep press down, and some abs. Again, after probably the dip, I'm probably not too fussed about the session order. You know, often you're slightly constrained by who is using certain bits of kit and that kind of thing. So I'm not too fussed. Probably one of the only things is I don't want the two tricep movements back to back. If I can get like the abs in between, I'll just throw those in between, just give my triceps a bit of a break, as opposed to the start of the session where I'm a bit more meticulous. You know, I want to have the lateral first, I want to have the shoulder press, the chest press, and then the dip, and then outside of there, I'm not too fussed, to be fair, and session performance and strength levels don't really change pending when the movements are performed. Nice big stretch. But importantly, my front delts aren't coming into it. Roll chest. Oh, yes. Oh. I think with triceps, one thing that's super undervalued is overhead movements in terms of hitting your tricep in the lengthened position, i.e. anything where you are stretching overhead. So you can obviously use cables. There's various machines. Obviously there's this one, another one here at Powerhouse. There's the M-Torture New Tech machine. However, I just don't like the handles. Yeah, as I said, you can do cables, whether it's, dual arm, bilaterally or unilaterally. They both work wonders. That's a missing link, think about when you are doing a front double bicep and the underhang of your tricep. That's a really good one, or a back double bicep for that matter. Instead of having, your arms at the bottom, obviously you've got the peak of your bicep. And then instead of, as I said, having a straight line across the bottom where your tricep should be, have a bit of an underhang, and that's sort of that, create that hang at the bottom of your tricep. That is where the long head comes into it. So, with that being said, back up to the stack. Let's do it. Okay. That's a fucking 2 rep added. Gee whiz. I think we're on here. So well and truly back into the stack. And I suspect, we can slow that down in terms of spending time in the stretch position, spending 1 count there. That again will further create a lot more tension on the tricep and make it more challenging, because ultimately we want to make sure the runway for progression here continues for as long as possible. How old school is this? Just someone at the gym wearing corded headphones or using corded headphones and connecting to their phone for the music. Who remembers that back in the day? I remember when I first started training, I used to try and somehow have pockets with a zip, so then I could have my phone in there with the cord hanging out up through my underneath my t-shirt or jumper, through into the ears. So then, therefore, when I'm doing an exercise, it doesn't fall out. The things that we just forget that happened, and we did. And then along come the Bluetooth headphones, which is a game changer. It meant that I didn't have to have my phone in my pocket when I was doing my set in order to listen to music. Crazy. As I sort of said, creating a short little break in between overhead tricep extension and the tricep press down. So I'll do some abs in between to give those triceps a little bit of a break. One thing I'm focused on here is sort of expanding that rib cage and crunching down. Nice big stretch, like any other muscle. That was a 20 repper. I'll probably do I'll go up and load in a bit for the next couple sets. I like to do that sort of, I say warm up, but sort of get the abs a bit pumped and then go a bit heavier. Been really enjoying this as a unilateral sort of press down variation, the tough stuff. Come on. Yeah. I suppose the pros of a unilateral movement is that, you know, you can get a bit... Sorry, some people are fucking yelling at people. The pros of a unilateral movement is that, you know, you can isolate that one side and put so much attention onto it. As opposed to if you're doing dual arm, you can often have one arm take over and not necessarily focus on one at a time. So, you know, particularly with like, let's say a pull down or an extension, you can kind of lean to that one side. And I find it personally, you can get a really good connection. Anyway, the con is obviously it just takes a little bit longer. So this is my rest in between sets. So I'm going to do the right arm, which you don't need to see because you've just seen the left arm. Alrighty, that is going to round out the push session. So a mic'd up push session for you today. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've taken a few tips and tricks, a few little nuggets. You know, I just sort of go on random thoughts and, you know, rambles throughout the session. So I hope you did enjoy it, get something out of it. So yeah, if you did, please like, please comment what you'd like to see in future videos, because I'm all ears here in this off season. We're growing. What do you want to see? What tips and tricks from a pro natural bodybuilder? And of course, please subscribe if you aren't already. Until next time, catch you in the next video.